we have the Under-17 AFCON happening right now, and we've seen players like Lukman Tapsoba from Burkina Faso, Emil Boy from South Africa, Alino Haidara from the Ivory Coast all light up the competition. But there are two major absentees from this tournament, Ghana and Nigeria. So I'll explain to you why these two countries are absent. And at the end of this video, you will tell me whether we need to maybe rethink our approach to youth football in Africa or keep it as it is. I don't know what I'm doing. So there is a bit of youth football in Africa we don't really talk about that much. Do you know that Nigeria is the most successful under-17 side in the whole world? Yes, the whole world. They've won the World Cup 5 times. 5 times in the whole world is Nigeria. Number 2 is Brazil. So Nigeria has done better at under-17, even better than Brazil. So number 2 is Brazil, who've won it 4 times. And number 3 is Ghana. Yes, Ghana, who are also from Africa. So the top 3 in terms of under-17, you have Nigeria in, and you have Ghana in there. If you come also locally on the continent, in terms of the under-17 AFCON, the best performing country at that stage is Ghana, who won the under-17 AFCON 2 times. And Nigeria also joined top because they've also won that competition 2 times. So these two countries, top 3 in the world, top 2 in Africa at under-17. But you see, there was a problem, a very big one actually, in this whole organization of under-17 tournaments in Africa. So in 2015, when we played the under-17 AFCON, we had to play qualifiers. And in the qualifiers for that edition, we had 22 countries who chose not to play in the qualifiers. So that's almost half of the continent. So we had almost half of the people deciding not to play. And in 2017, the number reduced slightly by a bit because we had 20 countries. It was still a lot. 20 countries decided not to play in the under-17 AFCON qualifiers, of course. And the main reason was one, logistics or financial reason, because in order to qualify to the under-17 AFCON, you had to play 3 rounds of games, at least 3 rounds of games, the first round, the second round, and the third round of qualifiers. And that will mean that you travel to 3 different countries to play all these games. And you know, there is a big financial problem in Africa in terms of traveling because it's so expensive. And with a lot of countries, there was limited budget for the associations, the football associations to budget for these countries. So for people who knew that it was almost impossible for them to qualify to the under-17 AFCON, they pulled out of the qualifiers. They didn't even enter the qualifiers at all because why play 3 rounds of games, spend a lot of money on youth football when you have a tight budget and you know you're not going to qualify? So that was the big problem there. This meant something had to be done. So in 2019, CAF introduced the zonal qualifying path or the qualifying slots for youth tournaments. So Africa was divided into 6 zones. We had the UNAF region for North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and the likes. We had the WAFU A for a bit of West Africa. That was Senegal, Mali, Gambia, and the other teams. We had WAFU B for West Africa B. That was Ghana, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Benin, Togo, Niger, all in WAFU B. We had UNIFAC. That was for Central Africa. We had Cameroon, Gabon, DR Congo, Central Africa in that region. We had SECAFA. That was for East Africa, where we saw Kenya, Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, all in this region. And we had the OSAFA region. That's for Southern Africa, where we had Angola, Malawi, South Africa, Comoros, all these countries in this region. So that was the 6 zonal regions where qualification for the under-17 AFCON was going to take place through now. So now with the old format where you had to travel to at least 3 countries before you make it to the competition, the new format meant that in all of these zones, we have one country who is the host nation who hosts a mini tournament for that is the zone alone. And then everyone goes to play that tournament, and then the winner qualifies to the under-17 AFCON. So instead of traveling to 3 countries, you now travel to just 1 country, stay there, play a competition under that is the zonal body, which is of course under CAF. And then the winner ultimately qualifies. But there was also a problem or a big challenge with this one, because if you look at a country like Burkina Faso, they are former winner of the under-17 AFCON. Ivory Coast, former winners. Ghana, former winners. Nigeria, former winners. All these 4 countries was under one zone. That is the WAFU B region, and they had just one slot. So you were having a zone like Sekafa, who had never won the Under-17 AFCON before, a zone like Kosafa, who had never won the Under-17 AFCON before, having the same slots as a zone like Wafubi, who had won 6 titles between the teams there. This also meant that even if you take the top 2 best Under-17 teams in Africa of all time, only one can qualify to the AFCON because Ghana and Nigeria were in the same zone. So in the 2019 qualifiers, in the final for Wafubi, we had Ghana and Nigeria play that final, and Nigeria won on penalties. So a penalty win for Nigeria, and Ghana didn't qualify in 2019. In that same 2019, we had countries like Eswatini, Uganda, South Sudan, Somalia, all take part in the qualifiers for the first time in a very long time because they were mostly pulling out. But then they took part in that 2019 after the zonal regional bit was qualified. And we had Uganda qualifying to their first ever Under-17 AFCON that year. In 2023, the numbers were increased, so each zone now had 2 slots to sort of qualify to the Under-17 AFCON. But it was still a challenge for B because you had 4 countries who were past winners: Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Nigeria, all past winners, and they had 2 slots to compete for. Then you had other regions where there was no past winner, and even in some regions, no team had graded it out of the group stage before, and then Under-17 AFCON, but they also had 2 slots. But this arrangement was a good omen for a country like Somalia, who made their first ever qualification. South Sudan also made their first ever qualification. Uganda, I mentioned earlier on, they also made their first ever qualification. Then even Central African Republic, who also made their first ever qualification. But in the same time, since 2019, in the last 3 editions, Ghana has not qualified to any edition of the Under-17 AFCON. Ivory Coast has qualified to just 1 in the last 3 editions. Nigeria is missing out on this last edition we are playing. And there is also one important thing to note, that the Under-17 has really shaped a lot of very good players from, that is, the African region. So a player like Victor Osimhen was shaped. Under-17 played a huge role in him sort of getting a move even out of Nigeria to have his career move up. So it was sort of the starting block, the foundation for him. A player like Frank Kessie, similar story. It was the foundation for Frank Kessie to have the career he has now. Even a player like Mohamed Kudus, he played a bit of a role because Ghana qualified to the World Cup from the Under-17 AFCON. Then he played in the World Cup, and then we got to see Mohamed Kudus to the World. So it has played a critical role in some players really getting discovered. And this is a tournament which is also the qualifiers for the Under-17 World Cup. So at the Under-17 AFCON, there are scouts watching your players. At the World Cup, there will be scouts watching the players. So anyone who performs can get a chance of getting picked up. But if the top teams are limited, you can't get all of them to go. That means that there's a possibility that a player who could have qualified if it was an open system and then get to shine at the AFCON or get to shine at the World Cup will miss that opportunity. It's possible if this format existed in 2015, maybe we couldn't have sent Victor Osimhen because we saw him through Under-17 AFCON. Maybe Nigeria wouldn't have qualified that year and we wouldn't see Victor Osimhen. If maybe this format was there in 2013, it's possible we couldn't have seen Frank Kessie. If it was there in 2017, it's possible we couldn't have seen Mohamed Kudus. So it's a tale of 2 thoughts here. Is it better to make it an open system where everybody gets to compete and then only the best of the best can get to qualify? Or you make it a zonal system where everyone can actually play in the qualifiers? Because if it's in a zonal system, some teams will not play in the qualifiers, because if you ask a team to maybe travel from the southern part of Africa to North Africa to go and play their qualifiers, or from the southern part to West Africa to go and play their qualifiers, and they know they will not qualify, now why waste all those resources, spend it on a tight budget, because you are not qualifying, you are not going anywhere. So what do? Do we keep the zonal qualifiers, or do we bring back the open system? Let me know in the comments what you think will be best in terms of the approach of how we focus on youth football in Africa moving forward.